Hola, Jeffrey Aragon Bustos here, and you're listening to CPGGUYS podcast.
Welcome to the CPGGUYS podcast. Your hosts, Shri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPGGUYS.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the CPGGUYS. I'm of course Shri, co-founder, co-host of CPGGUYS, also co-founder and partner at Think Blue, your key to unlocking your profitability potential. As builders, connectors, and amplifiers, we shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Please to listen to my older daughter Ria Raj's music at www.riaraj.com, and of course my younger daughter Lara Raj as a member of the Geffen Records Universal Music Group, Cat's Eye. And of course, for those of you watching, they got their hat on today. I was lucky enough to get one of those. And they've just announced and completed their tour of Jingle Ball in various parts of the United States. Super Hit Touch is now close to 200 million plays on Spotify. We're headed to Tokyo at the time of this recording for the Apple Music Awards. Can't wait. Joining me today is none other than BFF, Mr. Peter V.S. Bond. And when he's not co-hosting this podcast, he has head of client engagement at Flywheel, a division of Omnicom that helps enterprise brands improve their SEO and SEM, growing their e-commerce businesses. Peter, what's going on in holiday season?
Well, Shri, the travels have just been crazy. As you know, we were out in Chicago at P2PI Live. Then we hosted the DSN Total Store Awards and Issue Summit. And then I had to make a little jaunt down to South America to present at the Walmart Chile Suppliers Conference, which thank you again to the entire team there for making me feel so welcome. I've got a little bit of a trip down to Baltimore tomorrow, and then maybe we can slow down for a couple weeks until you and I head to Las Vegas for CES, and the crazy travel schedule begins anew, right?
Did you forget NRF and then FMI?
Well, that's what I mean. We got NRF. I got to go out to Seattle for a Flywheel trip, and then off to FMI. And then you and I are making a trip down to CAGNY in February in Orlando, our favorite conference to go to.
We just talk about our travel forever, so I'll move us forward.
And let's not forget, I'm also going to be speaking at the Syndigo partner kickoff in January as well. So I slipped that in there. A little crazy, right?
Yes, sir. Before we get to our guest, we want to ask you to consider following us in your preferred podcast listening app. If you haven't already done so, this will ensure you automatically receive new episodes as they are released. And while you're at it, follow our sister podcast, the FMCG and CPG Scoop, announcing the first retail media executive education program in our industry. From May 5th to 8th, 2025 at Cornell Tech, the CPGGUYS are strategic thought leaders and partners for this immersive 4-day program with none other than renowned faculty of Cornell to share best practices for building compelling retail media programs. You'll discover how to collaborate on creating best-in-class tech stacks, measure performance to ensure brand access, necessary KPIs based on campaign objectives, and establish strong partnerships between brands and retailers. Of course, we will be using AI-driven campaign design at scale. Links to our podcast, our sistercast, social media profiles of my daughters Ria and Lara Raj, musicians, offer more information on the Cornell Retail Media Program. You can find it all in the digital liner notes of this episode. And now for our main event. Today's CPG landscape has completely transformed, I would say. One would want to say over 10 years. I'm going to narrow it down to the last 18 months, where I think with a volume challenge in the industry, the consumer is leaning heavily on digital to compare price. An omnichannel shopper is today's reality, with the 24/7 on and a war for attention taking place for brands both in-store and online, and also for retailers. Whole maturity of the digital shopper, habits, how to build a path to purchase for this 24/7, which the industry is not used to, has emerged in the CPG industry, which means along with this sort of technology advance, retail media has become the next world in our industry, ripe for disruption and expansion far beyond what we fathom. All the large conferences I was at, whether possible at Miami, Shop Talk Europe, Barcelona, Cannes Lions Festival, Grocery Shop, the talk of the town was retail media, including the rapid evolution to in-store retail media. So what do we know? One of the challenges that has plagued us for 4 years now is the measurability of success. Every RMN talks to success metrics that it champions. What qualifies as a successful campaign? To decompose right, wrong, what's next with measuring success at retail media networks. Who do we have today as our guest? None other than a second time appearance for Jeffrey Aragon Bustos, VP of Measurement, Addressability Data of the Interactive Advertising Board that we lovingly in the industry call the IAB and look up to. His first episode on the CPG Guys can be found easily by going to Google and simply typing Jeff Bustos CPG Guys in your Google search bar. Jeff, I know you're out there in Colombia, Southern Hemisphere. How you doing today, man? I'm jealous, actually.
I'm great. First of all, thank you so much for having me twice at CPG Guys. Definitely an honor. I am in Colombia, in the coffee region, drinking coffee, and talking about retail media. This is my prize that I got at Sodimac. They're like the Home Depot. So I had a chance to catch up with the team last week, Thursday, and then I went to their holiday party on Friday. So retail media is everywhere. As Peter was saying, he was with Walmart in Chile. As you were saying, it's definitely growing not just in the U.S. but it's also accelerating in different parts of the world.
Absolutely. Congratulations, first of all, on the award. And we're going to get to that while we ask you question number one. And I'm, of course, incredibly excited to speak with you today about the space of retail media. But before we get to the detailed questions that Peter and I will be having a discussion with you on, we always ask every guest, even if they've been on the show, give us a brief overview of the IAB and your role, maybe like the 60-second version here.
Yeah, so I started at the IAB about 3 years ago. Had the awesome opportunity. I was hired out to lead retail media and cross-channel measurement at the IAB, and a lot of that was really broad. And one of the projects that I was given was retail media, and it's definitely accelerated a lot. And as we've started within retail media, one of the main objectives, obviously, is ensuring that we have measurement standards, which we have released, and it's also exciting to see that we have had measurement standards across different parts of the world as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jeff. And in the digital liner notes of this episode, as always, we will place links to Jeff's LinkedIn profile, IAB's LinkedIn page, and of course the website. That way, those of you listening in can easily connect back with one click straight from your smartphone. Jeff, I'm going to repeat a question that I actually asked you on the previous episode. We have a whole new audience. Our audience is more than doubled since you were here last. And we're adding listeners every single day. What they'd love to know is, as we look through your career, you've been at Interpublic, WPP, Omnicom, and now the industry sees you as the king of measurement. They actually look to you. The industry looks to you as your standards, what you put out as the ones to follow in the industry. Take us through the years from Florida International University all the way to IAB. And then, knowing what you do about retail media in this space, what's advice you dole out to those who are like, let me attach myself, because Peter and Sri are saying this is one of the hottest spaces in the industry.
I was born in 305 in Miami. And I moved to New York when I was 23. I started in paid search, or started in the SERP. Now we're here, as we say in the paid search space. I think that, within retail media, there's really nothing new within retail media. I think, sponsored products, display ads, CTV, social commerce. And what really sets retail media apart from each of those, and kind of within my career as I've worked with different things, is really ensuring that we've really put the customer at the forefront. And I think the idea of saying that relevant advertising is the consumer value exchange is very lazy for us to say as advertising, because it's not. When I was I was in Costa Rica a few months ago, and Walmart Costa Rica they did this really awesome activation with Trident Gum in Call of Duty, or it was Halo. And a lot of the in-store retail media activation was around, you bought the Trident Gum to get a code so you get gear, and then you went outside after your purchase and you had an experience. And I think a lot of in-store retail media in Latin America and Europe has a post-transaction experience, whereas in the US, it's just very see this ad and buy it. And I think that's why we're seeing why in-store is much more advanced in every other place but the US. Like in Latin America, 30 to 60% of retail media investment is in-store. Same thing within Europe. So I think kind of like, to respond to your question, a lot of my career as I moved through it is really ensuring is how can you align kind of with that consumer mindset and where they are and really provide value beyond just relevant advertising.
And then, Jeff, take us through a couple of those hop, skips, and jumps you made in your own career here to get to IAB. Did you have to acquire experience in advertising first before you could be the standards captain?
Yeah, I love reading. I'm a huge avid reader. I love learning. So my first job, I worked at a real estate company as a copywriter for 10 hours a week. And I was like, I kind of wanted to make more money. So I taught myself paid search. And then every time I wanted to make more money at the real estate company, I would just be like, hey, we should run social ads. We should run paid search. We should run email campaigns. And then, I had the opportunity to move to New York and, work for an ad agency. And even within there, starting, I would say when I was at Reprise, now Kinesso, I was, early on as a senior analyst, as a manager, I was always working in new business. I worked on the Ameriprise, TIA, new business pitches. And those really ensured that they adapted me to learn quickly. I would say anyone starting in retail media, I would say do a ton of new business because, retail media is a big thing now, but I think what you really need to acquire is the ability to learn and break fast. Like, new technologies are always emerging, things are always emerging. And I think the biggest skill you can have is the ability to learn quickly and then the ability to just also be aware that you don't know anything. I think a lot of times when I go into a conversation, I always just ask a lot of questions and I just try to get the full picture. I think a lot of times within advertising, we want to pretend we know everything, and it's okay not to know everything because then if you ask enough questions, you can learn a lot. And from that, I moved over from paid search into social. I had the opportunity to work on Dell, which was, a huge e-commerce account. And I think, working within Dell really ensured that I had a lot of the knowledge just to, make sure that to understand the consumer intent. Also worked a little bit on the Bose business. And I think within the Bose business, it really helped me understand audience intent. And then even moving to Hearts and Science when I was in AT&T, one of our best performing audiences was buying Amazon O&O. If you bought a moving box, you were going to buy internet. And I think a lot of times when we buy these third party audiences, the moment you're trying to target someone that's in market for internet, you're already too late because that person's already done a lot of research. The only way somebody gets into an in market audience is once they've done research. Unless you're one of the 2 or 3 companies you're considering, you're too late. So a lot of things is like, how do you think about audience strategy from a discovery phase? And then I think the most pivotal role before IB was when I was at Mediacom. I went back to Mediacom to lead data strategy in the US. And Marilyn Francisco, who's now the EVP of product strategy of Choreograph, she's, if I were to tell you the one person that was, is a reason for my success today, I would say it's Marilyn Francisco. One, she gave me the freedom and tools to do anything. So I, tested data clean rooms across ADH, LiveRamp, Habu. We did database identity solutions. We tested advanced television. We developed new audience frameworks. We developed linear regression models. It was pretty much my playground to do anything I wanted, and it was a great experience. And I think also what really helped me was she really, she has an awesome kind of personality, and she just kind of was fully herself. And, I think kind of going into the IAB, when I first joined, I tried to be like really serious and professional. And then I kind of just was like, no, let me just be myself. And I sometimes feel like I'm very casual and I wear really bright colors all the time. But I think kind of like, I would say like the person, if I could just point to one person in my career, I love this shirt. I would say, yeah, it's Marilyn Francisco. So if you want to work at the IAB, go work under Meb. That's what I would tell anyone.
The podcast, I should make mention of the fact that 3 more visits and you get the highly coveted wool and leather varsity Letterman's jacket with your name embroidered on it and the CPGGUYS logo on the front and back. So just keep that in mind. But thanks for joining us. And I'll just say you had me at regression analysis. That as a loyalty geek from the days of dunnhumby, doing regression analysis was a core component of my business. So Jeffrey, big year in 2024. Hardly a week went by that I didn't see another retail media platform emerge. Amazon, I think, had as many as 5 different unboxed events globally, with more in store for next year. We saw summits from quite a number of retail media platforms with their suppliers. And my God, the partnerships in the ad tech stack just abounded. At the same time, IAB released some highly publicized retail media standards. So a lot going on. I guess my question to you is simply this: what's the state of retail media going into 2025?
2025 is going to be an inflection point. I think, one, to your first point, there's way too many retail media networks. So I think that a lot of, as these new players emerge, brands are really looking to streamline a lot of their retail media spend. And I think it's not just the issue that there's a lot of retail media networks emerging. It's also because there's a lot of websites, there's a lot of apps. Like there's a lot of CTV platforms. I think the real issue is that it's not just a fragmentation that is a problem, but the fact that there's no standardization, not even within measurement, ad specs, or audiences. So like when I was in Dell, it was like $60 million, $46 million of search ad spend, and a team of 8 people. You need 8 people to run $6 million in retail media just because of the fragmentation, like all these platforms, and it's incredibly nuanced. So I think one of the first things is like this fragmentation is retailers need to think: are they going to be programmatic ad tech players online, or are they going to be these like social platforms where everybody invests in Meta and then like the second platform that's related to your brand? So I think retailers are going to kind of come into this scalability, human resource, because there's a human capital problem. It's really expensive from a human capital perspective to run retail media. And I think to your second point, we're seeing the emergence of a lot of these non-endemic retail media networks such as United Airlines and Chase, which I'm really excited about because United Airlines and Chase have to prove performance to get ad dollars. And I think that competition is going to continue propelling retailers to improve their measurement capabilities. One of the exciting things is that, in 2024, we saw Instacart. It was the first retail media network that got accredited for MRC standards. All this is public information in the Media Rating Council. Walmart has started the audit. Amazon has started the audit. There's 3 other retailers, which I can't mention, that have started the auditing process with the MRC. They're one of the top 10. So, we are seeing a lot of retailers moving that direction. So I think it's going to be both a combination of like slowing investments from brands as we see deflation, but then also retailers accelerating their measurement and tech stack.
A crowded field indeed, as you mentioned. But I do believe, Jeff, it's a survival of the fittest, a little bit of the Darwinist theory on retail media. Not every retail media network has the ability to invest and grow either, and has, most importantly, the audience. So the very next thing that comes to all of our minds is measurement. And a word that's been floating around the entire year this year, for lack of other words, is incrementality. iroas. It started as iroas last year, if I remember correctly. And net new to brands I don't think brands really understand what they're asking for when they say, hey, I want to know my net new to brands, but yet they ask it because it's sexy. What's your advice to brand on this new word, incrementality, overall? Does it even mean anything?
It does and it doesn't. So I think that the reason that incrementality has become such an important metric within retail media, because again, it's not a new metric, is because it's the first time within an ecosystem where the ad is placed in the same place in an ecosystem in which the transaction or outcome happens. So there is a need to prove incrementality. At the same time, when I'm working with retailers and brands and having these conversations, if I tell you that like your iROAS increased 20%, like what does that mean? I mean, first of all, it only increased within that one platform, and sometimes they're only telling you within onsite or within offsite or in store. But I think at the same time, also, you need to start focusing on leading indicators. So, for example, like let's say Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Like, if you're a retailer, you go to Coca-Cola for the Coca-Cola product and you tell them you have new to brand, they're going to laugh at you. 90% of the US has had a Coke. Like it's not a, Coca-Cola cares about purchase frequency and basket size. Whereas Pepsi does care about category share and margin. So I think that when we start thinking about iroas or any sort of outcome metrics, we have to then look at our leading indicators and understand what are the metrics that you can actually optimize to that have high correlational value. For example, I don't know if you guys have had Olipop. I'm obsessed with Olipop. I buy way too much Olipop. And for me, I am new to the category for Olipop because I don't regularly buy soda. That's very telling. If somebody was an avid soda drinker and then they moved to Olipop, they're new to brand. And I think brands should start looking at the measurement they have and say, how can I use measurement to improve my decisions? Because a lot of times, a lot of these measurement reporting happens. They're just a report. Like I present my report to Peter and I'm like, this is what happened. And then we just forget about it. And no one's actually like thinking, hey, was there a customers or a new brand? Or hey, our purchase frequency decreased. What are we going to do? And I think that's probably the biggest opportunity brands are missing.
Jeff, I love your mentioning new to brand as a key metric for brand managers. Challenge is twofold in that, right? If you have a product that is not as fast moving a consumer good as cereal or milk, say a television, the biggest challenge is the look back period, right? And how much data you have. Amazon in the marketing cloud limits it to 12 months. So if you're buying a television, is 12 months a relevant period of time for you to evaluate? And if you're Walmart, right, you were to try and take Walmart Data Ventures and do a look back, a high percentage of their transactions are cash. So it's challenging to get to that metric. The other one I'd say is, even if you are fast moving consumer goods, are you really new to brand or are you new to brand in that retailer, right? So it's directional. I wouldn't say it's absolute, but it's the kind of thinking that I think brand managers need to move in that direction, right? It's, incrementality means nothing when you're launching a new product, right? Your investment is purely about getting awareness and things like that. So I'll get off my soapbox and get to my question. Let's talk about joint business plans. Amazon has got, I forget what their acronym is, but basically their push this year is you want to get the benefit of doing JBPs with us, you're going to need to spend at least 20% of your ad spend against DSP as opposed to, on-site paid search. When we look beyond them to other retailers, are JBPs happening in omnichannel retailers with the merchants alone? Are they integrating with the retail media arms as a part of that? Like, what's the status of omni-channel JBPs as you look out into the industry?
I wish there was some consistency. So the first one would be that when we think about JBPs is that there's not consistency. Everyone's doing JBPs differently. I would say, whether you're doing a joint JBP or not, I would say both as a retailer or as a brand, it's incredibly important that you coordinate internally to understand what you're negotiating. That's probably the most important thing, because a lot of times you have to understand where your product succeeds within a JBP, whether your product is best served in a retail media or merchant first capacity, and seeing where you can negotiate. And I think, one of the things that brands are starting to see and is starting to restructure, or they're just improving internal collaboration, is that they're not speaking internally. So I think kind of like that's the first thing, to ensure that there's that internal collaboration. And then I would say the second thing is, as you kind of think about JBPs, is ensuring that you're aligning to your business objectives. I think a lot of times when you look at what business objectives of JBPs, there's definitely a miss there. I don't think that, I'm not saying that you should do joint JBPs or not. I think that's kind of depending on like the brand's objectives or not. I think we may start seeing quarterly JBPs just because, brands are kind of, going to start demanding more flexibility, more ability to have it. And I think also when brands are looking at retailers, I really recommend them having a way to tier and evaluate retailers using some sort of correlational system, so they can arbitrarily say, well, these are kind of like my priorities for a retailer. They should have these capabilities. You scored this percentage. If you want increased investment, we can, if you improve these capabilities, we can definitely consider that. And that really ensures that brands are able to better negotiate comparatively. And I think that also helps because a lot of times within a brand, teams are built around a retailer relationship. So that person with that retailer relationship may not know what other retailers' capabilities have. And I think at the same time, it's important retailers even have their own sort of, tiered mapping so they understand where they stand against different ones, and it helps them understand and really positions or value capabilities for brands as well.
Let me remind the public that I'm speaking to Jeffrey Aragon Bustos, Vice President at Interactive Advertising Bureau, lovingly known as IAB in the CPG and retail industry. So Jeff, let me jump over to the IAB question. How does IAB collaborate with other industry stakeholders to set standards and best practices for advertising? I know in everyday advertising minus retail media, you'll have had incredible success. I'm not saying you haven't had it in retail media, but you are the standard. IAB is the standard for measurement and standards in media. How's that going with respect to retail media? And then how are those standards actually evolving?
Yeah, so we partner within the US with the Media Rating Council, the MRC, to develop these standards. At the same time, one of the awesome things at the IAB, we're a global organization. We are in various countries. We're in Colombia. We're in the UK. We're France. We're in Australia. So one of the things that we've done, first of all, is we've collaborated with the MRC, and we collaborated with the MRC for the retail media measurement guidelines, which we finalized in January. And then we also had, you joined us at Cannes, and we had these debates with the European and US retailers. And following the conversation at Cannes, the US and IAB Europe came together to develop in-store standards. And the reason we brought in Europe was because, from an in-store perspective, Europe is very advanced. If we think about an online on-site perspective or off-site, the US is obviously more advanced. But it was a really exciting cross-Atlantic collaboration in which we were kind of trading notes with different retailers and see what was working, what wasn't working. So that's really where we're ensuring that collaboration. If you look at IAB Mexico, they collaborate a lot with SIM. So there's always a specific other organization, or we try to collaborate within different ones. Earlier this year in April, we also released the Retail Media Buyer's Guide in Spanish with LATAM, and we brought in 7. So we brought in Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Uruguay, Peru, and we brought in all the retailers of the region to develop this. So it's a lot of like cross collaboration globally within the IAB as well.
Jeffrey, having worked across the globe, having worked with numerous industry stakeholders, I'm really curious what kind of frameworks or tools you've been exposed to that you think are facilitating the harmonization in this space.
I think when we think about the harmonization within the space, I think one of the things is data collaboration. I think we're going to see a lot more data collaboration and identity resolution.
I hear clean rooms being a core component of that, yes?
Yeah. So I think that's going to be one big one.
When I come into these clean rooms, do I need to bring a mop and liquid bleach or no some sort?
You need to bring some differential. You need to use some differential privacy sprays. So yes, but no. I mean, we'll see a lot more collaboration within that. I think I'm working with a lot of.
Do you think the players understand that they don't need to own the data anymore? They just need to access the data. That frees up the capital investment they need to get better results because they can do so in a privacy safe environment. They don't have to own data anymore to make decisions.
I think some of them do. I think some of them don't. I think a lot of the smaller, newer players from a brand and retailer perspective don't fully understand that. But, I think with a lot of data clean room solutions, it's not just, it's the ability, like, for example, LiveRamp is creating this capability so that they can, you can go in and pull the same measurement report and across different retailers, and then you can easily compare retailer performance within that environment. And they're kind of like, off the shelf solutions. Other data clean room providers are doing that. It's also ensuring that like the Citrus and the Criteos and all the ad servers, sponsored product solutions are actually also aligning, and a lot of them are working towards that. Because at the same time, it's not just releasing the standards and saying retail should adopt them, ensuring that technology companies are moving and developing the solutions so that that those can be adopted. And I think the final thing is also ensuring that like if you're a retailer that does not have a lot of on-site traffic, but you generate a lot of in-store traffic or off-site traffic, then you're probably going to focus on those parts of the standard. So like a lot, so that's why a lot of the standards were called guidelines, because you have to ensure there's some flexibility, and then also within that, like Best Buy and Kroger should not have the same measurement models or incremental models, because to your point earlier, you buy a television every 3 years, you buy milk twice a week.
I think, Jeff, if I were to think back about frameworks and tools in this space, AI comes to mind for me in a significant way when it comes to insights. Retail media is only as successful as the large volumes of input data coming out from a measurement perspective. But I'm yet in many spaces in insights, AI is at the forefront, but I barely hear it in retail media. Any reason why that's the case? And I'm curious to see if I'm wrong, Jeff. Is AI impactful in the space? Is IAB following AI? Are you personally following it as a trend?
Yeah. So we actually hosted an AI working group a few weeks ago at Microsoft, and I'm working on releasing a generative AI playbook for advertising in a few weeks. I think there's a lot of hype within AI right now. I think I think the real value of AI is having it fully adapt to our lives. And when I think about use of AI, I think about Instacart recipe solution, where you can just ask it for a recipe and then it gives you the recipe. You can just add everything to the cart. That's generative AI. That's probably the best that's the best use of AI that I've seen, because it's not simple, but it's a really simple thing that people need. They need recipes, and not only recipes. The worst thing about recipes, you can never find the ingredients. This does everything for you at once, and it's using generative AI to scraping recipe content. A lot of retailers are looking to adopt that, and that's really looking at how can I make the shopping experience or any sort of experience for the consumer as seamless as possible. So I think that use of AI will become much more. We'll start seeing a lot more of that. And then when we think about AI broader, not from a generative perspective, then a lot of retailers are starting to look at computational machine learning, and we're going to start seeing a lot more advanced capabilities within measurement. I think we're going to see a significant more advancements with measurement. I think we're going to start seeing the rise of tree regression models to be able to understand all the features within a campaign that have the highest correlational impact to ROAS or whatever outcome you're measuring. So I think we're going to see an acceleration of measurement capabilities and be able to react. And I think from a dynamic creative optimization, we're going to see a lot quicker, not just insights, but to be able to adapt to creatives much faster and generate new creatives based on insights, obviously within specific, brand safety guidelines. But I think retailers are definitely looking at, specific generative solutions. And I'm excited to kind of see how they continue, not just within Gen AI, but just Gen AI in general, including machine learning. At the same time, as Peter said earlier, not everything has to be AI. I love a good regression model. There's nothing wrong with a good regression model. And sometimes that's just the best way to do things. So let's also not complicate ourselves and call everything AI at the same time.
I want to use Henry logic. Why do I have to use regression? I just wanted to sound cool, Jeff. I remember back in 1997 having a conversation with Art Christiani from Circana, then known IRA, about Henry logic. I just remember that word for some reason.
Wow, Henry logic.
Peter, I want to ask you a little bit about AI as well, right? Working for Flywheel Digital, y'all obviously are in the business of reporting against e-com, digital, as well as retail media is big forte of y'all. How are you guys using AI on retail media?
Well, obviously, first of all, I'll say there are two parts to Flywheel's business, right? There's the organic search component and there's the paid search component. It has a tremendous amount of impact on the organic search, because building all the necessary content to populate PDPs across multiple products and multiple platforms, the more you can use that to iterate, the faster it can be done, the better it is for brands to win in organic search. In paid media, it's a little different. I would talk more about the applied AI, not so much the generative AI, in terms of creating the head terms for search and being able to figure out what are the right search terms. Feed, the algorithm will tell you, here are the top 20 terms for this product. And then a human eyeball can look at it and say, okay, this is good, this isn't necessarily good. And then feed that back into the algorithm, and very quickly it can figure out what to do. Even when you think about the content on the page, right? One of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest obstacles to finalizing PDP content is no shock here, Shri, the lawyers. Shakespeare was right. First thing, let's kill all the lawyers. But in all seriousness, the ability to go through legal guidelines can be onerous and can just slow down a process beyond belief. AI presents us with the ability to build that into the algorithm and start to tease it out, so that the lawyers spend very little time actually having to manually review content. And in doing so, content on PDP is going to be updated much, much quicker. And that means a brand can optimize its search a lot better. Does that make sense?
It does. So the Supreme Court should be using AI to make case decisions?
I don't know about that, but in theory, it should allow interesting things that I use AI for. I don't know about you, Shri, but I have ChatGPT on my desktop, and I probably use it 20 times a day.
So Jeff, let's just go back to that for 1 second before we get to our last question. Optimization of retail media, shouldn't it be an automatic for AI, and why is it not?
The issue with the optimization of retail media is that you're operating across different platforms, you're operating across different ecosystems, even within the same retailer's universe, So it's resolving data from Pinterest and Meta into your retailer, and then bringing that and trying to understand incrementality is really difficult, because you get aggregated data from a social platform, and then you actually get, you can pull in CTV data from the clean room. So you're not, the data match you're not doing is not capable. But I think, to your point in AI, we're definitely going to see a lot more use of machine learning to be able to do more probabilistic data. I think with the rise of privacy and everything, we're going to see a lot more advances within probabilistic data. I don't know why the advertising industry is so obsessed with deterministic data. Like, it's so limited. Like, sure, there's a lot of value for first party data. You can pull a lot of insights, but there's no reach. Like, you can't find new customers with deterministic first party data. There's people that are bought. If you start building, probabilistic models, lookalike models, high customer lifetime values, expanding that universe. And I think a lot of the internets and a lot of the growth we'll start seeing next year, and what machine learning will enable, kind of to what Peter was saying, is being able to make faster decisions with imperfect data, and then make the models being able to kind of learn quicker and identify gaps within the data, which I think we're going to see a lot more of. I think a lot of the advanced measurement we'll see will be machine learning. I think we're seeing a lot of it now. If I always recommend to someone talk to like a data scientist at a Walmart or a Kroger. First of all, they're really nice, and then you can just get, you can definitely have really great, awesome conversations to really deep dive in how these retailers are doing advanced measurement and capabilities. But yeah, I think, with machine learning and advanced measurement, you can start with a true regression model or chain level analysis. You can start understanding, not just saying this is the incremental value, these are the metrics. You can say well, these metrics had the highest correlational value to this outcome. And that's probably more telling, because what are you going to do with 20 metrics? It's not going to tell you. But if I, as a retailer, can tell you these 4 metrics have the highest impact to your ROAS or your iROAS, then you know what you can optimize. You know how you can improve your creative. You know how you can do all these other optimizations. And then over time, to what Peter said, that can be automated, using a lot of these AI tools.
Flywheel founder Patrick Miller, if you heard Jeffrey say that deterministic data isn't all that it cracked up to be, please calm down, take an Ambien, everything's okay. We're doing just fine here. We're just shooting the shit. Don't pay it no mind. So let me close this out, Jeffrey. Talking about where retail media is going. What's got you most excited? Is it about the growth of in-store? Is it streaming television, publishers making their content available to multiple platforms? Is it about connection to social commerce? Like what should we be paying attention to going into the new year around retail media?
When I think about 2025, I think it's a global aspect of retail media. And the fact that it's growing rapidly in different parts of the globe. We're seeing live shopping take off in Asia, and a lot of these retailers do really awesome, innovative things within a retail media environment. We're seeing, Walmart and Amazon really lean into the creator economy. From an in-store perspective, we're seeing, Walmart Mexico and Sodimac in Colombia and Tesco in the UK leading kind of best practices and standards of what in-store really should be. And then we're seeing retailers within the US innovating in terms of offsite partnerships with CTV and social commerce and really optimizing sponsored product, placement and optimization. So I think it's this really exciting environment, and we're seeing innovation happen differently in different parts of the world. I was in Turkey a few weeks ago with Migros, and they're seeing 50% of their retail media investment is in store. And then from an on-site perspective, 70% is display ads and 30% sponsored products. Within the US and ecosystem, it's kind of the opposite. So I think it's really interesting to see that, a lot of these retailers' innovations are happening by consumers, how consumers are engaging with them. So I think we're going to start seeing innovation. I think next year, a lot of retailers can do cross, global collaboration and kind of start learning from each other. So I think that's where I'm most excited to kind of see how each retail media continues to evolve differently around the globe, and just kind of learning from each of the different market ecosystems and just regions.
Let me remind our audience you can find all of our content by simply going to a web browser and typing cpgguys.com. And if you think you or your company has thought leadership to contribute to our community discussion, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. And maybe you can join us on the podcast. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com in the navigation bar at top. It tells us how we're doing, whether we're having the right speakers. LinkedIn, we can't thank you for the 35,000 plus followers. Jeff, thank you for joining us on the CPG Guys.
Thanks for having me. It's been an honor to be here twice, and hope to be back next year. Happy 2024, everyone. Happy 2025. Happy New Year.
Peter, any quick one or two things you picked up here that you wanted to just quickly address?
Yeah, I'll just say that, Jeffrey kind of reiterated the fact that there's a massive amount of fragmentation and there's not a lot of consistency around measurement, and there's still work to be done there, that JBPs are not terribly consistent, not surprising there. Incrementality is not the only measure. You need to be thinking about new to brand. You need to be thinking about long-term customer value. And there's a lot of opportunity for growth. AI is going to be a critical component in our ability to scale out and make this a much bigger picture. And that IAB is working very diligently to collaborate globally and across different stakeholders to help build standards that are being adopted by some of the big players. And that's going to make it a lot easier for everybody to standardize around ad units, around measurement. And it's going to make it easier for everyone to invest and to achieve what Kara Pratt has said to us as emblazoned on the T-shirts we created, which is retail media is media. And we just need to get to the point where everybody understands that and can activate against it. That'd be my thought, Sri.
I actually think retail media is a movie or a baseball game, and we're the early innings, third inning.
I like the baseball analogy.
Which one do you prefer, movie or baseball game?
I'm always going to go with baseball.
So we've always said this is a baseball podcast, which also talks a little bit of retail media. So with that, that's a wrap of this episode. Peter, Jeff, thanks for joining me. It was a pleasure as always. See you soon in another episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPGGUYS LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPGGUYS LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPGGUYS LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPGGUYS LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.